first. He is a senior researcher at Rethink Priorities, a professor of philosophy at Texas State University, and the director of both the Arthropoda Foundation and the Animal Welfare Economics Working Group. He led RP's Moral Weight Project and launched RP's Worldview investigation team. So I'll just hand over to you.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Lovely to see everybody. I will do my best to say lots of implausible things in the next 5 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So the idea of this talk is to start thinking about the ways you might go about assessing the welfare of AI systems. And the way I tend to think about that, coming from philosophy, is to think, okay, well, let's do this from first principles. Let's think about, the relevant theory of welfare that you should have, and then let's see if we can get from there to some sense of the kinds of considerations that would be relevant for assessing welfare. So, the thought here is, look, there are a bunch of different theories of welfare: hedonism, objectivist theories, perfectionism, so on and so forth. But it's really hard to know whether these things are conscious, whether they have phenomenal states, but maybe it's a bit easier for us to start thinking about them as having desires, and if so, then we might think that, at least given uncertainty over the correct theory of welfare, we should take this sort of view seriously and think, well, things are going well for an AI system insofar as its desires are satisfied, and if any desires it has, and things are going badly for that system insofar as its desires are frustrated. And so we get a model like this, a theory of welfare like this, and then we can start figuring out, well, what would have to be true for us to assess the welfare of the system as positive or negative, at least in some respect. Now, one of the wrinkles here is we actually got to know what these things want. And it's notoriously difficult to try to assess what an LLM might want because, of course, it's supposed to be helpful and useful and kind and friendly, et cetera, and give us everything that we want. Excuse me. And that, of course, makes it difficult to know whether we're actually getting the actual desires of the system or something that it has been trained to convey to us. All right, so we have to figure out, thank you so much, what we're dealing with respect to this system. One way that we could get around this, perhaps, is to narrow the focus a little bit. So when we're thinking about LLMs, yeah, it's hard. I'm not really sure what to say about that. But what if we just, in terms of like the full breadth of what an LLM is, but if we think about a narrower class of these systems and just think, well, what about just the agential ones, right? Then maybe we could use features of agential systems as a way of trying to extrapolate what the actual desires are rather than simply the ostensible surface level desires, right? And if we could do that, then we could apply our theory of welfare and we could try to figure out, well, here's what's good and bad for the system, right? And so one thought, right, and this is very much still, some talks are half-baked and there are other talks that are quarter-baked, right? We're at quarter-baked, right? So at the quarter-baked level, right, the basic thought is, well, what if we looked at power seeking as a way of trying to assess what the genuine, rather than the merely apparent desires of the system happen to be, right? How might we think about, of course, we're all concerned about power seeking because we're concerned about the alignment problem, et cetera, right? So this is often framed as a problem, but here we're thinking about it as a tool for getting to the real desires of the system. But how might you get to this particular conclusion? We got to figure out, well, why think that these are in fact real desires of the system, right? Why not think those are just like one more instrumental desire, right? It's not actually a real desire, it's just a thing that they have to do in order to get other things that they have been programmed to do, right? So not actually a deep or sincere desire. So I'm going to give you two routes now why you might actually want to think of these things as real desires. So one of them, this is we're now doing some philosophy deep cuts, right? And talking about, Christine Korsgaard's views of agency. But basically the idea that Korsgaard had was thinking about, in the context of human agency, she wanted to say, look, you actually have to value your own agency in a certain kind of way to sort of count as being an agent at all. If you didn't really care about your ability to do things, then there is some crucial sense in which you would not be an agent. So maybe we can have a similar kind of view with respect to the partially constitutive of agency. You have to actually want your own power to do things for those systems. The other option would just be to say, well, look, let's take an evidential route, not constitutive, evidential. maybe it's just the case that because every set of desires includes some desire for power, that should be taken as feasible evidence that we are dealing with a sincere bit of the system's desires, right? And so this is potentially going to create a tension between safety and welfare. We're like, oh, now what's good for them is also what's bad for us. But probably there are ways to work around this because it's not obvious that they have to have the desires that are deeply in conflict with what would be good for human beings. So we can potentially work our way around. Anyway, that's all you can do in 5 minutes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. What is the distinction between like the training objective and then the desires of models, if there is any such distinction?
Well, so the thought here is that you're actually identifying the problem. The problem is that the training objective is just going to look like the desire. And then the thought is, well, how can we ever distinguish whether that is in fact what the thing wants versus simply what it has been essentially forced to try to achieve based on the way it's being systematically rewarded. The idea is that, well, insofar as there's any way to sort of get underneath what is simply incentivized versus what is sort of sincerely desired, maybe you could use something like a power-seeking theorem as a proxy for that, as a way of thinking about what it would want independently.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Great.